again. Back again. Welcome to Friday Night Love, where we mix old school music with new school music, along with conversation on finding and keeping love. Join in with your questions and your comments, and please like and share. There might be somebody that's in need of this conversation, and they won't know unless you share it with them. So my name is Brother Spear.
And I'm Dr. Raha Tir, and tonight we're going to discuss the politics of manhood in U.S. society and how it potentially affects how men interact in relationships.
So, welcome to Friday Night Love. He's sick and tired of struggling, y'all. He's sick and tired of struggling. Come on in, come on in. Yeah. All right. You know, you do this just to pass on information. Hey, fam.
Emma Chin.
How you all doing?
I said her name right.
Listen, there's some information here that I want you all to grab hold to.
Key.
So, grab a seat.
Welcome.
Grab some wine, and let's spend some time. Welcome again to Friday Night Love. I see y'all chiming in. Yeah, come on in, come on in. Welcome.
Lift him up.
So he don't want to stretch no more. You hear that?
Yeah.
Listen, y'all. Listen. Provide for himself and his family, but you know there are some blocks and there's some curves on the road. So we're going to talk more about that as we go.
Okay, so as I said, tonight we're going to talk about the politics of manhood and its effects on how men interact in relationships. And so one of the books that I use in examining this is a book that was written by Hakim Mahabuti a while ago, actually, but he looks at a book called Black Men Single, Obsolete, and Dangerous, and that's with a question mark. He's not saying they are, he's just asking the question.
Okay.
And so to examine the politics of manhood, we have to start with contextualizing them in the society in which they live.
Okay.
So with that said, we want to examine the politics of black men. You have to look at their position in society, and so what has that been? Or look at the position in the context of the society.
Listen, y'all, this is real.
Right.
This is real. It's deeply embedded, and I want you all to really grab a seat, grab some wine, and really spend some time, and absorb this. Absorb this. Right. This is real, y'all.
And so, if you look at the context for African American men, that has been in the context of racial oppression, started with slavery, and it still goes on today. So when you address the issue of the politics, it's important to understand several factors.
Okay.
And this, it comes from Hakim Mahabuti. First is that men rule the world.
Wow.
And that's not being made up. That's a fact. And they fight to maintain their part in the world. White men control most of the world economically, politically, militarily.
Hey, let me tell you, this is real talk. This is real talk.
White men don't fear women. Men don't fear so men don't fear women, generally speaking, but men do fear other men. Right. And so, since African American men have been on this soil, they presented potentially a threat.
That's right.
So then, how do you eliminate a threat? You strike at their most basic and fundamental survival need, and that is make it difficult for them to feed and clothe their families, make it difficult for them to protect their families, and when anybody's basic survival needs are not being met, or when they're being undermined, then that affects their psycho-emotional, physical, and spiritual health, making them insecure.
That's right.
And so there are several things that have been put into place to do this. So how is this done? So we'll go into that as we go through
It's a system that's by design, you know. So again, it's Friday Night Love, and because that's what we're all gonna get to, you know, we gotta kind of again dig down deep, yo. We're digging down deep, so we can really look at what's inside, because it's all about getting back to love. It's bottom line.
Right. So
getting back to love.
So what we're doing here is we're just trying to deconstruct and break this all down, and then we kind of reconstruct it and put it together. But it's about being clear and being clear about what's really going on, and understand that both men and women live. It's political. Being a man in this culture is political. Being a woman in this culture is political. Being a black man is political. And being a black woman. So we're going to talk about men tonight, and then next week we'll deal with women.
Okay, listen, y'all. This song, which is why it's important.
Wait a minute, I actually haven't addressed the last song.
Okay. No, I'm still here.
Oh, okay.
I'm still here.
Okay.
Because he's saying he don't want to struggle no more.
Right.
That's what he's saying. That's what it's all about. I don't want to struggle no more. So check it out. This is Noah Long. I'm married in on this. Lift me up. He said, help me find my way to stay strong. Come on, brothers. Find our way. Oh. He said, thank God that you believe in me, because your love gives me energy.
That's right. And that's what we have to do. We have to believe in each other and work with each other and help each other. Understand that. So what helps us is we understand. So it's being clear about this stuff.
It's got to be clear.
Yeah.
But we have to know the root of it, because we know the root of the system that we function up under.
Right.
It's not until then that we can make a difference and we can look in the mirror and have good conversations with each other. So that's the bottom line now.
So.
Okay.
So we talked about we talked about the politics and how men can some men be threatened by other men, and so we just kind of talked about how to eliminate the threat, you want to throw them off balance, basically. So you make it difficult for them to feed and clothe themselves and their families, and then that's going to make people feel insecure. So there's been mechanisms that have been put in place during slavery and after, and even continue on today. And one of the most significant mechanisms that was put in place are stereotypes, negative images and stereotypes.
Okay, hey, she's going to throw some things out there. These are nuggets. Check out these nuggets.
All right. And so I'm going to go through them briefly, and then I'll discuss them. We have Uncle Tom, the coon, the stud, the stallion, the buck, the brute, and what I'm calling the criminalized males or menace to society. So Uncle Tom was generated during slavery to depict African American men as loyal, docile, happy slaves. Then you have the coon, and this is basically describing them as lazy and trifling and dishonest and perpetual buffoons. But the implications of both of these stereotypes are to say that they had no consciousness about social or politics. So about their position in the social.
So they were just kind of floating along.
They're basically saying they were socially and politically unconscious, right? And so, and that they were irresponsible and dishonest and all these things. So you put these kind of stereotypes out there and say that they're happy, they're docile, they're happy to be in this position. Then now you can justify saying, they're inferior people. And then also generated was the stud or the stallion. and they basically just perpetuated the stereotype that black men were hypersexed. A lot of this had to do with them really, interestingly, they were actually writing their journals talking about their size of their penis. I mean, so it's just very, very interesting that a lot of that politics. So now they're saying, okay, well, they dehumanize them and try to, make them inferior, and then say that they were good breeders, so to speak. And so, but they perpetuated these stereotypes during slavery. But then after slavery, you had different kinds of stereotypes. Because during slavery, you wanted to say they were these passive people kind of beings, and now after slavery, you have to say that they're these violent beings because now you have to justify why you're murdering them, right?
Yeah.
And why you see them as a threat.
In order to do things up under the law, there has to be justification.
Right. Well, it wasn't necessarily under the law.
No, well, a law allows this to take place based on the next man's story.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, laws were created to be people. Be really interesting to go back. There was a book written by I think her name was Shashi McIntyre, where she talked about criminalizing race, and she talked about all the legislation that had been put in place to potentially keep black people, not potentially, but to keep black people oppressed.
Okay.
So that it's a very, very interesting read, and it's, very, very insightful to just talk about the legislation. But a lot of the things that were going on during that period didn't have, they were just mobs going out doing all kinds of
exactly. And
things.
we read about these things, and we also, some of us yesteryear witnessed these things.
Right. Well, we're witnessing it now. That's the interesting thing. Right.
Still now.
Right. And so the other stereotypes were like the buck, which is really the bad, the big black, the big bad N-word, which I don't even like to use the word because I think it's so degrading. And so this is depicting them as violent and racist of women, of white women. Rapists of white women. Then you have the brute, and he was a violent, savage, bloodthirsty male wreaking havoc everywhere. And so those are stereotypes that were generated after slavery. And so a lot of these stereotypes are actually perpetuated in the black sexploitation movies during the 1970s.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Right, and then bring it forward now, they have the criminalized male or the minister society. And so you still have the same stereotypes that's being perpetuated.
Okay.
And so now what that does is lay the justification for racial profiling.
Racial profiling.
Right, so we're going to talk about that.
That's right. Because let me tell y'all something. You hear the more information you hear, the more pressure it puts on me. But we rise when we're under pressure. So the more pressure, I'm gonna rise, I'm gonna get through it. Pressure, y'all. Pressure. Because we're going to get through this because we're going to get back to love. Loving each other.
Right.
In peace and harmony.
Right.
Loving our brothers, loving our sisters, doing all the right things because we're aware now.
I believe it's so strong. But sometimes I just can't take it so lightly. Try not to hurt the feeling.
I can do something about one at all.
But then again, it just might be. Then again, it just might be.
No, he's talking about the relationship, but see, in a relationship.
You hear what I'm saying?
Right. Because when a brother has to get out here and work and serve the world, as he works and walks his path, just trying to find himself and find the needs for his family, it is a lot of pressure. And then when it's not coming fast enough, it brings pressure inside of his home.
Right.
And that's what she's talking about.
Right.
The pressure inside of her home, but he's dealing with the pressures outside the world, and the world which he brings, because it's not moving fast enough for her.
Right. Well, she's under a lot of pressure too, so we'll get into that because
Okay. I mean,
yeah, right.
It's
both of us
two
under
ways.
pressure, right? So
That's why we have to have these type of conversations.
Right.
So the blessings fall. What's in store, you might never know. Just fall back, what will be, will be. Shake the load off, won't let the stress
Friday Night Love. I don't know how much love this is.
Yeah, but we have to.
These are tough conversations.
It's part of the terrain,
right?
You know, you have to. It's sometimes you have to go through some murk, man, to get to the summit.
Yeah.
You know,
go back
the summit's beautiful.
Right. So, wow. So I think, so that really speaks to the pressure for both men and women. And so we understand the context and understand, so again, we're going to deal with women next week, but tonight we're dealing with, the pressure that men are under. And so I thought this song was apropos to really deal with this topic here, because a lot of guys are really under a great deal of pressure.
It's a great deal of pressure.
And they come out, and it might come off in ways we don't realize that the way in which they interact have a lot to do with the pressure.
That's right.
Right, and so
right. Even with each other.
Right.
Even out here in the world, in the brother to brother scenario.
Do they have a lot of pressure in there? Because that explains a lot of the violence that goes on in our communities and stuff like that. So it's very, very interesting, but don't do that yet. So now the stereotypes that I just discussed was dealing with white American generated stereotypes, and then you have African American perpetuated stereotypes, and so these stereotypes. So we have our own stereotypes that we perpetuate within our communities that are really founded upon the stereotypes that were generated in white America. Okay. And so what are these stereotypes? The MFer. Okay, and so basically this is the same stereotype some of the stereotypes I just discussed. It's a lying, cheating, person trying to get over kind of thing. Then you have the no good N-word, and that's really the coon. So he's basically a lazy, trifling, cheating, stealing kind of guy. Then you have the low down dog, and this is the unfaithful man who sleeps with everybody. And really, this is just really founded on the stud, style, and breeder stereotype, right? So a lot of it was generated, but we perpetuate it.
Right.
And so we were talking earlier. Me and you were talking earlier. We were talking about how the N word is used. And I think in the culture, a lot of people try to shift the word and make it something positive, but
it's not.
It
will never be positive.
Right, because all you have to do is reduce a person to a thing. It's just using the N word. That's basically reducing them to a thing, and now it justifies whatever you decide you want to do with them. So during after slavery, when they wanted to, before the mob did some of the awful things they did to black men, which is really very, very difficult to talk about. But they first said he's going on the N word. So now you're a thing, and now we can justify it. And the same thing black men do even today. They'll call each other MF or N-word, things like that, and then now it justifies them being violent. Right. So you're reducing each other to things, and now it justifies you being violent towards each other and bringing harm to
what we're saying is be conscious about the things that come out your mouth.
Yeah.
What you may think that it's, because they're really pushing in all different ways to say that this is how we communicate with each other. No, divide and conquer. Believe me, it's not cool, because they said, listen, I don't have to go to you all anymore. Let y'all destroy yourselves within. Right. So just keep that in mind.
Right. And so, like, a lot of these, all these stereotypes are used because of the failure of black men to carry out gender roles of breadwinners, fathers, and husbands.
That's right.
But there's a lot of obstacles that makes it very, very difficult to do that. And so, historically, we knew what the obstacle was. Now things have gotten a little bit more complex and more confusing, and we're not clear. And so, and it just creates a whole lot of havoc in our communities, and then in our relationships.
Okay. So you're saying that they've thrown some more elements out here that that we can't see or we're not clear about?
Huh?
They've thrown some more twist out here in society?
Yeah, well, what it is like, so remember I talked last week about how mass media, it's whoever controls mass media.
That's right.
And whoever controls the programming. A lot of us don't recognize that mass media really is just social programming, basically. A lot of it's social programming. And so it's socializing us. And so whoever controls those instruments control the values, they control our ideals about each other, they control the stereotypes. And so if we buy into these things, and then of course these things can potentially have a negative effect on our relationships.
Okay, that's good information, because let me tell you something. When we dig down deep and we talk about these things, which is these character references of how they kind of depict who we are and how we are based on the way that we act. And we're not going to accept that because our value is worth the weight in gold. I'm telling you, no matter what we do, no matter how we're doing it, no matter what our deficiencies, our shortcomings, man, or our leaps and bounds, we're worth the weight in gold. So check this out, y'all. I want y'all to listen to this right here. I don't care what they say. We're worth the weight in gold. The purest of pure substance.
Dust in orbit. Cascades down like a parachute. Bricks on
Scotty said, what y'all doing?
Hey, Mr. Scotty.
Tell me what y'all
My
doing.
brother. How you doing over there out there in Texas? Texas chiming in.
He said, what y'all doing? Listen.
pulling my way. And go. Don't make nations help me broke, but I can't lift this on my own. Pulling my way.
That's right.
I can't do this by myself.
I'm gonna do it for myself. But I'll push it. I'll push it.
Don't make nations help me broke, but I can't lift this on my own.
How y'all doing out there?
We drift like waters. I never thought I was holding
So I want to talk about the discrimination.
We're worth the weight in gold, y'all. All these depictions, all these character references that they say that we are not.
Right.
We're children of the sun. They say the sun is the son of God. Gold, God, gold. Weight in gold, son of God.
Okay. And so, so when we talked about the stereotypes, and so, anyway.
Have fun.
Okay. All right.
Just have some fun.
All right. So the stereotypes of what underlie racial profiling. Well, of course, most of us know what this is, and this is a discriminatory practice of police targeting African Americans or groups because of their race or ethnicity. And so basically, it's social policy and action that results from negative images and stereotypes. And I don't think a lot of people make that connection. So if you say people are all these things, now you can justify policing them in a way that's racially profiles them. Okay, and a lot of us don't realize that policing even started with slavery.
That's right.
Right, they had the paddy rollers. They had groups of men that would go out and control the slaves, and wanted to make sure that they were, kept them in control. And so the same thing that even happens today. And so you still have those things, those stereotypes that are still underlying racial profiling.
Okay.
All right, and so then the next thing
Now,
is, okay, go on.
Racial profiling, when we are aware that that's happening, which we all know. I mean,
Right.
we're all out here, under this culture in the inner city. We know that this takes place.
Right.
So we really kind of want to position ourselves. I guess we had this conversation earlier. How can you position yourself to be seen in another manner? And we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't. I said, maybe if the guys pulled their pants up.
Okay.
Maybe.
I don't want to go down that road.
But, I don't want to go down that road either.
Right.
But there was no antidote.
Right. But the thing about it is, as I was saying before, is that we have, it's the controllers of information that really have control.
Okay.
So if you don't have access to the mass media, like for example, social media is one of those areas. So it gives us a little bit more because people can put their own, perpetuate some of their own stuff, positive stuff. But I'm saying, those who own the instruments to control of our ideas are,
Right.
So we don't have out of control of that. But one of the things we talked about was how when we get access, because you have some of us who do get access to mass media, some of us, but because we don't have a good healthy definition of what masculinity is and what manhood is, we continue to perpetuate the same stuff. And then some things won't even get access. Some things won't even get access unless they perpetuate those stereotypes. And things. So the next thing I want to talk about though is discrimination in the opportunity structure, and this is really huge because I thought it was interesting how in that song he was saying, even though I might be broke, I carry my weight in gold.
Right.
And so, but because the primary definition for masculinity and manhood in this culture is having economics, or having economic power, if a lot of men don't feel like they're worthy if they don't feel like they have economics, and so that again, that's by design.
Okay.
And so when we look at discrimination and opportunity structure, you have a lot of, for the African American men, a lot of them struggle with being either unemployed or underemployed or subemployed.
Okay.
So people think it's just unemployment, but you also have underemployment,
That's
meaning
right.
that you don't make enough money to live, or
That's right.
subemployment where you just have sporadic work. Sometimes you're working, sometimes you're not working.
Right.
And so a lot of this has to do with globalization. And so a lot of we talked about last week,
That's right.
a lot of the jobs that men held traditionally where they could make a good amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
moved overseas,
They
or
outsourced it.
they outsourced
Right.
it.
And then you're going to shut all the factories down.
Right, a lot of the
Right.
factories, a lot of men used to work in factories, a lot of those are shut down. They moved manufacturing to other countries where they get cheaper labor, and then a lot of the men began to move into traditional female roles that pay less money. Because women
That's
worked
right.
in a lot of
They're more
service.
domestic and service.
Yeah, it was more service work, and so
Okay.
now men are
Okay.
moving into those kind of jobs because we don't do manufacturing.
Right.
They move to other countries, and so also we live in a society where there's increased increased need for highly skilled labor. So people who have technical backgrounds and stuff like that, and so we're not being trained in those positions, trained with those skills in those areas, right? Then we it's gonna make it difficult to get those jobs, and so but even so. What's happening also is that some of us are trained, but they're still moving to jobs abroad because they get cheaper labor.
Right.
So it's a whole lot of things that contributes to black men not being able to participate in the opportunity structure in a way that's going to help them provide for themselves and their families. I wanted to continue with this. Or you want I could knock this piece out.
Okay, because there's something that's very important. Because when we're in this place, it's like we're out here in the middle of the ocean, trying to find our way to land, or trying to find our way through.
Right.
So keep on. So maybe I'll be able to hit. We can find out where we can navigate this.
Right.
We can navigate through.
Right. And so some of the jobs moved abroad, and other jobs moved in areas where, they call the suburbanization of jobs, where a lot of them moved to industrial parks where people who lived in the inner city couldn't get to, because they didn't have the transportation to get to them, or some of these areas didn't have good transportation. And then there was a study done in the 90s called When Work Disappears by Julius Wilson, and he talked about, they went out and interviewed a lot of employers, and hundreds of employers, and it showed how the stereotypes carried over and even into the labor market. So that's what I'm saying. It's not just that the stereotypes are undergird racial profile. Well, racial profiling also is, you find that not only in the streets with that, but you find it in business and you find it in employment.
Okay.
And so they interviewed employers, and these are some of the things they were saying. They were saying black men have low or no work ethic, that they're lazy, they're undependable, dishonest, just a whole number of things. They had an entitlement attitude, that they had poor skills, and they thought they were going to set them up.
This was created.
No, I'm telling you, this is what employers were saying. This is why they didn't want to hire them, right? And so again, it shows how the stereotypes carry over. And now, some of the employees may have had some experiences, right? But we know that some of them probably didn't. They're looking at the television, they're seeing a lot of the negative images and stereotypes, and they have informed these stereotypes, and they're saying these are the reasons why we don't want to hire black men.
And it's all fictitious.
Well, some of it is. I mean, because some of it, like for example, some of the things they talked about was how, and we know because we own the business, how some of them don't have good job interviewing skills. Some of them come to work, they don't know how to dress for the job. They're using street language, and so a lot of this has to do with men being raised in families where they don't have. And some of it's class,
the
right?
Proper influence.
Right, the proper because you talk about fathers not being there, and fathers being there in a healthy way. So,
That's right.
And women do the best they can, but a lot of times men connect with the patriarchy. They connect with other males. So when women are raising men and they're doing the best they can, what ends up happening is when they get to adolescence, they start connecting to male power.
Right.
And so whatever male power that's being defined in this culture, in the society, they begin to place more value on that than potentially what they're getting from the women in their lives, or the mothers and the women who are raising them, their teachers and people like that.
Okay, well, we're in the middle of the ocean right now, and let's find our way back in.
Okay.
So this one here I think is very special. So listen to the words, y'all. for a ship to come in.
Expectations, full of desires. I just want it so bad. You know.
Check out the words, y'all.
He said he felt a lot of anxiety, didn't he?
Yeah, because it's right there. Like, you can't touch it. You gotta touch it before it all disappears.
Yeah.
Feels like everything is passing me by.
Yeah, Jessica Hunt.
Reason why a ship has gone and sailed away.
I see Jersey has checked in. What's happening, Jersey? All right. Jersey in the house. He said the ship's coming in. Right over the horizon. Just keep plugging, keep pushing, keep pushing.
Yeah,
Just keep pushing. Never give up.
that's right.
Don't leave me hanging, baby. I'll get it. I'll get it. I'll get there.
Yeah.
Sail the 7 seas. Anything.
Wow.
Anything you want
It's
to
destiny.
You're a part of that.
Yeah.
Hang in there. Keep pushing. Hang in there. Don't leave me hanging. It's coming. It's coming. Ooh. Finally come. He said finally. Come around. Hung in there. Hung in there.
Yeah. Okay, so this I don't know how to talk about this after that song.
Well, that's okay. Just
Yeah.
if we understand and we know some things and
Yeah.
we can do some things and we can hang in there.
Yeah.
It's not until we know what gives us the patience to hang in
Yeah.
there so we can grow.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know, because life is growing, it's always expanding, but it's always confusion. And
Right.
in order to get through confusion, we have to have discussion. We have to have conversation.
Right. Exactly.
You know,
and being clear about.
Be clear.
Because that's the thing about this, like one of the reasons why we just because we talked about whether or not we wanted to have this conversation, because you know it is about love, right? But we think it's important for us to really be clear about you know the context in which we live.
that
so
we're walking
right
as a man, and it has to accept life as a man, and the way it's viewed as a woman,
right.
as a man walking through this journey that has all these obstacles, all these things that's off the rhythm, off our natural rhythm. But if you hang in there, we'll be okay.
Okay, so we're trying to work together and work through it. So
That's right.
So we was talking about employment, and then one of the things is even black men who are self-employed. The one thing that makes it hard for them is having lack of access to capital and credit, and then having to pay more for insurance because of where our businesses are in high-risk areas. So there's a lot of things in terms of because the fundamental thing here is being able to provide for yourself and your family.
That's right.
Right,
That's
and
bottom line.
if people don't have that basic foundation those foundational needs met, then it makes it difficult to do everything else.
That's right.
And so that's why that first song, and he was talking about the financial pressure. But that was the first song. What was the first one?
Right. It was.
He was talking about the struggle.
The
He didn't want to struggle no more.
You don't want to struggle
And
no
then
more.
the
That's
pressure
right.
and everything.
That's right.
And so then when men are going through all these, having these experiences, then you have a disproportionate number of men who end up in the prison industry and die prematurely. So if you look at some of the stats, black men make up 6% of the population, but they are 41% of the prison population. 1/3 of African American men are in the criminal justice systems, and in some cities, about 50% of African American men are involved in the criminal justice system. The leading cause of death for black men between the ages of 25 and 34 is homicide. That's just tragic. So if we losing men in those age groups, then where are women going to find husbands?
That's right. That's
You
right.
know,
We
and
see it
so-
on the news every day.
Right, and
you
it's
know.
just absolutely.
And we have to really,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
just-
kind of identify what's going on, we really have to band together with a certain understanding on the same accord.
Right, just have an understanding about some of these issues, and then they die disproportionately from the nation's 10 leading causes of death. And one of the things that we talk about is how many black men never even make it to retirement.
That's right.
Because the stress of and all the stress of being a black male in this culture and all the other dynamics that we're talking about here.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you don't have when this happens, we have men involved in the prison industry and we lose them to premature death, then it leaves women to have to raise the children. And so you have women now have to be the mothers and the fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a lot to put on one person. And a lot of women are not connected in their networks like they used to be. Some of them still are, but some of them aren't.
Well, there's no time.
Right,
But,
but
between working and then coming home and taking care of the children, because it's supposed to be a shared responsibility, but it's not. It's a single household, a single person head of household.
right.
So there's no time.
Right, and so, but historically, we were in communities where you had multi-generational families that were involved. So you might have had the grandmother and the grandmother, so you still women raising children. But now some women are living like as single parents. They don't have this. They don't even have their extended networks helping them. And so you have women raising the children. Of course, we talked about a lot of these things last week about how you don't have men involved in the development of their children, and particularly how the impact that this has on boys, because they don't really have a clear role models. They don't have a clear definition of what masculinity is and what manhood is, or clear healthy definitions of what that is.
Well, I'll say this, brother to brother, there's an intelligence that only a male can deliver to a male, because we have our way of thinking and way of understanding, and only we can deliver that to our sons, and we're going to show that to our daughters as well. So, so just remember that, you can't complain, you can't get upset if you're not doing your best, but a son needs his father.
And the daughter needs them too. We're talking about men now.
But this show is about men and the things that men have to face. But we really have to, really scrape the nonsense off the table, man, and look at what's real, what's the pure sense of what we're doing. And if we're procreating, if we're having children, let's do the best job with them.
Yeah.
Period.
Well, see, before you go to that, because what happens is, again, all the dynamics that take them out of the household, so that's the issue. But one of the things that Haki Mayabuti said that I thought was very, very interesting, he says, when people lose their men in a world ruled by men, that people, especially if they are landless and it's defenseless, cease to be a threat to anybody. And then he says the loss of black men between the ages of 13 and 30, which is the warrior class, represents a danger of genocidal proportions. So, and it's interesting that the leading cause of death, we have the high level
genocidal proportion.
Right. So
that's real, y'all.
You're talking about you talk about black men dying between the leading cause of death between black men is between the ages of 25 and 34 is homicide.
Wow.
And so you're wiping out a large proportion of men, and so that's going to have a huge effect on women being able to find husbands,
right,
to help, and when they have children, to be able to have fathers for their children. So this is really serious stuff here.
Guys, I know that we say, well, if society, if I can't find a job, I might have to go out here and do my thing. They call it a thug life of a thug. But listen, man, you don't have to go down that route. But if you're there, let's come on back in. So check this out. There's There's a way back. There's a way back. It's cool.
You know how you start the song?
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah. Amazing how you started that with that.
check out this song, y'all. Check out the words. Come on in, come on in.
You can't stop, I'm on solution now. I tell you whatever you need, and I've done. Live the life of a hustler, keeping it gangster.
We might have to go over a little bit tonight because I got a lot I want to still go through, okay? Let's go over a little bit.
All around the world, there are kinds of guys. Tell you whatever you need, and I've done. Coming up, I had it bad. I never knew my dad. Only memories of put you in a frame. They passed away when I was 2. There was nothing they could do. And all I knew was that he was the ladies' man. Mama kept pressing on.
Come on in, family. I see Darson.
Yeah, he said, but I like what he's saying here, like his dad.
What's happening, Darson?
She kept her head up high to the day she died. Told me to never give up. Do what I gotta to survive. I've been uptown, played many games for many girls. Been all around looking for love, but no one to trust. I've been locked down with the big boys, see I changed now. From high school diploma, made my mama proud. The life of a thug soul, radio, drugs, whatever you name, whatever you name, I've done. Oh yeah.
So this here, you got right out of time.
Change.
Right. So you want to say that?
Wait.
Okay. Right. So
See, this song, a lot of brothers can relate to because sometimes when they can't deal with society, kind of lets them down. They have to go and deal with their own type of society to make things work, to bring home the bread.
right, and so that creates a whole lot of
whole lot of different
dynamics that really create a whole lot of unhealthiness in our communities, and so.
So this brother
But
here,
he talked about how
when
his
he
mother
came
wasn't
around,
there. His father passed when he was young. His mother, so he came.
father passed when
Right,
he was 2.
right.
So
So he
But
came.
he came around, though.
Right, exactly.
That's how it is.
Right, okay. And so I think one of the things that is talked about is how what makes some of this stuff challenging is that we don't have a good, healthy definition of masculinity and manhood. And so what some people did is deconstructed it. So then that's what we're going to do a little bit here. They deconstructed it, and you want to kind of reconstruct it. And that's kind of what some of the people who have done the historical, looked at manhood historically, and then have masculinity and manhood historically in Western societies. I've looked at it kind of in African societies. And then you have some people who kind of deconstructed what it means in this culture.
Well, that's kind of what we're doing right now. We're trying to first throw it out there,
Right.
and then we can deconstruct it, man, and see if we can rebuild something different.
Right, and that's what Hakim Mahabuti does in his book as well. But I just want to talk a little bit about, so you have Western ideas, and so the Western history, when you deal with the ideal of masculinity and manhood, that has changed over time. So from Europe, which is what the U.S. is founded upon, you have the epic male, the chivalric male, and the epic male was a warrior, and then you have the spiritual male, and he was, the male that followed the example of Jesus. And then you have the chivalric male, and that was the 12th century black knight who had his prowess in battle.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have the Renaissance male, and that had a lot to do with his intellect. And then you have the bourgeoisie male, which was based on wealth and prestige, and that kind of carried over into the United States. Then when you get to the United States, you also have ideologies that changed. So they went from the agrarian patriarch, where the male had all power over his household, and all power over everybody else, because during that time was slavery, and so they controlled men, black men and women, and women in their own race. And so it went from the agrarian patriarchy to the men's movement, because once women begin to challenge patriarchy, then men begin to get confused about what their roles were. So that's going on even today. Now they talk about now us being in a woman's era, and so women are now gaining more power, and so and they're challenging patriarchy, and so now men have to just deal with how they're going to be with with this challenge.
Okay.
And so you actually, like they had a women's movement.
Okay.
They also had a men's movement.
Okay.
Right. And so you had the women's
Okay.
movement in the early 1900s, and then you had the feminist movement in the 1960s. And then you had the men's movement in the 1970s and all the way up to the 1990s. And so
I don't think the brothers knew there was a men's movement.
yeah, there was a men's movement.
We didn't even know that.
Right. And so it's men really now trying to define what their roles are going to be, while women because women have challenged the way males have dominated and controlled women.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
you want to play something?
So I can kind of.
Okay, I can keep going.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot we want to cover.
Right. Okay. And so when you talk about masculinity, I mean, what is probably the single most defining characteristic of masculinity is strength. Right. And so when we talk about strength, then let's deconstruct. There's different aspects, different levels, different types of strength. So you have physical prowess, and this is the ability to kick no matter in what arena, in war or politics, and the United States dominates in terms of the military, and so all this kind of plays out in that. So you have physical prowess, you have sexual prowess, and this is the ability of males to attract the most attractive and physically endowed females, which really means it's about them being able to reproduce.
Right, and that's what at the end of the day.
Right.
Whether we're consciously understanding that or not, but that's what it's all about.
Right. So you get the woman that's well endowed. Well, it really means, at the most primal level, it's really about reproduction, right? And then you have social prowess, and this is in economic and political arenas. So this really has to do with the possession of money, access to power, and being able to influence, the ability to influence. Mental prowess meaning you intellectually able to kick you emotionally prowess, meaning your ability to control and not show emotions. Okay, and then spiritual prowess is your ability to maintain cool in situations and to have inner power. And so if you talk about these different levels of power, if a male possesses one or more of these power, or one or more of these areas,
it dominates.
Has strength
in his personality.
Right. So that means now he fulfills the role of a man in the culture. Because when we talked about gender, so you have gender and you have gender roles. So gender means masculinity or femininity, and masculinity means having strength.
That's right.
And then gender. So if you have strength in these areas, you're able to carry out your role as a man.
That's right.
And so did I have economic prowess? Yeah, economic prowess probably would fall under social prowess, so economic and political. So
That's right.
Right. So then, okay. So
okay.
Right.
Well, life, man, it's challenging. It really is. It's challenging, and we all know this. So, women, I'm talking to you all now. I'm gonna do a close up. Don't be talking about your man to your girlfriends and saying what you got and what he ain't got and all those things like that. Because as soon as you turn your back, your girlfriends. Anyhow, I'm just gonna say, if you think you're lonely now. Old school, new school, y'all.
Yeah.
And I kind of threw this in the middle, just kind of break it up a little bit.
Right, but
because I'm doing still all lovers tonight.
Yeah, but right.
It's Friday night.
But he's talking about some of the things that men feel.
That's right.
What I'm saying?
This is exactly how we feel.
Right.
When it's cold outside, who are you holding?
I see Boston in the house, Mr. Cooper. How you doing, Mr. Charles Cooper? Good seeing you, brother. Good seeing you.
She's always complaining about the never being at home. But when I'm damn broke.
When he's damn broke.
When he's damn broke.
It ain't easy out here.
She ain't got.
Old school meets new school, y'all.
Well, he's saying that. He's like, he'd be long. That's the old school thing. It's one of my favorites. One of my favorites. Yeah, so I like that
Not easy.
because it's old school and it just sounds really good, right?
Yeah.
But he said he feel like he want to testify, right? But so just I think it's really still dealing with the brothers and some of the pain that they feel in terms of trying to live up to the expectations of this culture and then of the women
And
of the woman in their lives.
It's not just him; it's her. She wants him to do all these things. She wants him to be home, also make the money. He says, "I can't be at two places at one time."
Right? So sometimes some of them have a difficult time balancing that. And so when we look at some, kind of breaking this down, deconstructing this, one analysis deals with it, and it talked about how there's a three-tier scale of masculinity, but it's based on white male masculinity, and where strength is defined as dominance. And so that's his problem. This is part of the problem with how masculinity is defined in Western culture is based on dominance. And so when they talk about the three tiers, they talk about wealthy men being on top, those who have access to white male power, but remain marginalized in the middle, and then those who are subordinated by both these groups on the bottom. Then it's also based on what they call binary thinking, where they define masculinity in terms of differences from and dominance over multiple others who occupy a place of marginalized and subordinate masculinities. And so that's the second aspect of it. Then it also deconstructed as in oppositional relationships constructed, defined by the opposition to women, gay men, poor and working class men, boys and black men. So a lot of when people define or try to understand or try to say what masculinity is, a lot of it is what men are not. Right. And so what they're saying, men are not women, they're not gay, they're not poor, they're not boys, and they're not black. And so because basically they're saying what real men are. Right. And so when you deconstruct some of this is what
who wrote this?
Well, I don't know. I don't have it here. But you have someone. I think it was Patricia Hill Collins. So who? It's a feminist analysis, but they kind of deconstructed how masculinity is constructed in Western white culture.
Western culture, right?
Exactly.
Because it's saying the power of a man. Right.
So if a man's not broke, a man is not gay, right? So this is what they're saying. Men are not. A man is not boy. He's not immature. He's not unemployed. A boy means you're not able to support yourself, right? So all these things, and so and a man means you dominate over women. So but we're saying this is how it's constructed, and so then in the same for black men, as a group, they are denied full access to white masculinity, right? And so because they are black, and so basically they're saying that the best thing they can do is achieve an honorary place bestowed on them by white males, and so just something to look at, in terms of how we talk about deconstructing this stuff, and so, but in any event, even regardless of how unstable manhood is and how it needs to be redefined, regardless of their status, manhood at its most basic or fundamental level means still being able to be a provider. Right, being able to earn,
that's the bottom line.
Right, to be a provider. Right, to be
at some level.
At some level,
with
right.
some.
It means to being able
in
to
some category.
Right. Well,
because not every category, you can provide.
But economic provider.
Okay.
Right, and so not necessarily that you provide everything, but you at least be able to go get a job and bring home some money.
That's right.
Period.
That's right.
Right. So not necessarily you're going to, I just said that, but I'm saying it again, that you're going to pay all the bills, but you got to bring home something.
That's right.
Right, and so. And so even though white males dominate the U.S. political and economic institutions, and they are the major providers and protectors of the world or the global economy,
and
right? Right, and that's right. And so regardless of where men are, white males are able to identify with their own power through connection with white male power, right? And they also are able to still carry out their roles because of their white male privilege. Although a lot of that's changing. Because it is because that's why you have a lot of stuff that's going on. I'm not going to go down that road, but like they talk about the white males who were not able to, all the stuff that's going on with the Trump administration, and how he's appealing to a lot of males who are not able to provide now because they have not been able to keep up with the way the economy has changed. So you got a lot of that stuff still going on, but regardless of that, for black men, since they've been in the United States, their ability and their roles have been undermined, and it's started with slavery. So the question is, how have black men responded to this? They say there's two ways in which they responded. One is they have adapted and the other one is oppositional masculinity. And so the adaptation means that a brother wrote a book called Cool Pose, and he talked about how although cool, so basically means they try to maintain your cool. Right. But he says although cool originated in Africa, which meant spirituality and inner strength.
Right.
In the West, based on their experiences with in this experience, it's transformed into something else. So now it became a cover for inner turmoil. Right, and so now we talk about.
So he's on the brink.
Cool.
He's on the edge.
Right, cool or cool pose, and he kind of defined it as black masking, black acting, shucking, black humor, and all these kind of ways and strategies that men use that were coping mechanisms to be able to do when they were slavery.
The deficiencies.
Right, exactly, and then it's also the presentation of themselves that men use to establish their male identity, and so he defined it as a ritualized form of masculinity, which entails behavior, scripts, physical posturing, impression management, and carefully crafted performances that deliver a clear message of having pride, strength, and control. But in a lot of instances, they don't. It's a lot of turmoil going on because of the stuff that's going on in the culture. It undermines their self-esteem. A lot of them have. So you have this whole cover to cover their sense of lack of control, the lack of inner strength, the absence of stability. Their damaged pride, their shattered confidence, and all these things that makes it very, very difficult to have a healthy identity in this culture. So, but in spite of that, they say there's positives to this because it does show pride, search for meaning, and protection. And then there's a negative side, and we know what that negative side is. A lot of the damaged relationships with other men and the damaged relationships with women.
Well, I hope you're still with us. I hope you got your ear pinned. I hope your ears pinned to your cell phone or pinned to your computer, or some of us pinned to our television, smart TVs, because this is some really, really, really good information. It's very powerful information, and how you absorb it is what will define tomorrow.
No, I'm going to do this right now because I want to.
No, you still finish. I'm saying understanding these things help you better with your relationship.
Right, exactly.
It helps you understand really how we got set up, what we're dealing with.
Right, exactly.
How to get out the streets, come on home, man. Let's have these conversations, man. Let's figure out what we're going to do.
Right.
Talk about it together. Let's work it together.
Because I think a lot of men and women, but particularly men are there's a lot of confusion. So I'm sure a lot of this goes on. You have this inner turmoil because you're not clear. But once you get clear, for me, even as a woman, once I got clear, it made me be more clear in terms of how to understand men and what they're, and why they behave in ways that they do and things like that.
That's right.
And so, so now we get into the meat of it. So how does it affect how they interact in relationships?
That's right. So I just want to say this, the more you know, the more patient you can be.
Right.
Or the more impatient you can be.
Yeah.
Because when you know this and you recognize that there's just might be some trifling stuff going on here, so we got to make this thing can move past this, or there's some real issues
going on, right? And so, like a lot of times,
because women don't know what it's like to walk in a man's shoes out here in the world, and a man, of course, can never understand what it's like to walk in a woman's shoes. Right. But we're going to talk about these things, dissect these things, in with man this week and a woman next week.
Women next week, right?
Women next week.
So again, how do these factors affect them and how they feel, and then how they act in relationships? So, I think fundamentally, a lot of men are stressed out, right? But they put on a cover as if they're not, because if they, a guy said this in my class. He was like, one of the reasons I used to ask the question if it's okay for a man to cry, right? It was interesting to hear some of the things that people said, right? But a lot of men said one of the reasons that they put on this front is because they feel like.
I can't imagine what they would say. Really, to the image and the stories and the things that the strong arm yesteryear fathers used to put on these brothers,
Well, so anyway, because women did begin to do things like qualify what they could cry about, right? But one of the things they said that I think is, I don't know if a man said or a man said that he feels like, well, a woman said that. She said if she looks at him and he's crying and he's falling apart, then she's really going to fall apart.
That's right.
And I think
he's the pillar.
Right. So I think men instinctively know that.
Right, we do. Right. It's like, so hold it in.
Right, you got to pretend that everything's cool. Right. You know what I'm saying? Because, you're right. If we start seeing you panic, then we really going to panic.
Or y'all. Let me tell you something. These women, I love these. Our sisters, man, are so bad. They see a brother break down, they just step right up and hold his back up, man. Hold his back until he gets it together. I've seen it so many times. She holds him up.
Well,
man,
some of them do. Some of them start trying to punk him.
No. She'll hold him up, man.
Right. Well, it depends on how serious he is.
I still believe in y'all. Y'all gonna hold his brother up until he gets his act together, or at least his moment together, and then y'all work it back out together.
I think that's what the fear is. So a lot of men are stressed out. Think of, the only thing I can think of what it must feel like, because women, we experience it because we worry about it all the time. Because we worry about it with our male children, and we worry about it with our brothers and our husbands. You're fearful of them being in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think, so we're fearful of it happening, so I can't imagine what men feel like.
Wow.
Right, wow. And then but I think most of all, we don't realize how vulnerable they feel.
Right.
Right, and so.
Right. Or how vulnerable we actually are.
How vulnerable you are and how vulnerable you feel, right?
But we hold it in,
right?
Because we still got to do this, no matter what. We still got to handle it,
right? And so, for a lot of men, they're guarding their vulnerability, and it makes it difficult to have intimacy. And so,
that's a whole other story,
right? And so, how he deals with women it had a lot to do with based on whether or not he sees her as an ally or a threat, right? And so, because they feel like they have all these other obstacles that they're up against, and so now he has to kind of see whether or not she's really with him or if she's not really with him, if she's a threat to him, so those kind of things. And so, but anyway, I like to hear this one here that Heaven says.
Okay.
So that song there, I think, is really.
What we have to do is, there's a certain truth about life. There's a truth about humanity. There's truth about brothers. Truth about sisters. And what we call this. We call this.
Wait a minute, hold on. Let me say one thing. So I think some men are hyper vigilant about to make sure that their kindness is not taken for a weakness, and then a lot of them really don't know what to do, so they get in a relationship, they don't know what to do, and I think for a lot of men, if they don't feel economically stable, they don't feel worthy.
Okay, well, listen, this is something that was told to us by the heavens, man, because heaven says, that we are all this, we are all that, and so check this out, y'all. Sit back, relax. Friday night love, y'all. Friday night love.
Wow, this song is a tearjerker. He has to have a home. Show him the way.
Help restore his pride, y'all.
He is holy guide. Show him the way. He has to have a home. Heaven says, show him the way. Let restore his pride. He is holy God. He is holy God.
It's a beautiful song, help hold them up, help hold her up,
right.
See the struggle in each other's eyes.
But be his holy guide. I thought that was
be his holy guide,
right?
But
some of that becomes challenging because I don't know who we're talking to. We're talking about the woman in your life.
Well, we're gonna
each
say
other,
both.
just men and women,
each other,
right?
Because it's real.
Yeah. So, and so what happens is you're gonna do this.
No, keep on.
Yeah, I can't do that because that brings me somewhere else. Let me turn it on.
It's just beautiful.
Smile.
want to do this last part.
Yeah.
Should we? We're going to talk about relationships. Should we do this last part talking about baby boy? Probably should have put that at last. I need to be done with me. Okay.
Help restore his pride. Yes, Holy God, Joe. All right, I just, something comes over me when I heard that.
Yeah.
And I just had to share it with you.
Yeah.
That's all.
All right. And so, in order to not feel vulnerable and remain controlled, then some men devise maneuvers to have in their relationships with women in order to be able to have control, right?
Okay.
So that they don't feel vulnerable. And so, I think there's two types of men that I think is prevalent in the culture. One of them I refer to as baby boy, and a lot of that has to do with. And so, I kind of describe this as a male who has a hard time in the economic sector. He's unable to take care of himself. And so he might hold residence with his mother or several women at the same time. And because he's dependent on women for food and shelter and transportation.
Because he just never got his footing.
Right. So then he might use a variety of manipulation and tactics so that he can feel like he's in control. And then the other one is the player, right? And we know that that's very common in the black community, but it's based on him using his different, his prowess, his sexual prowess or his ability to speak well, and his, and all those things.
His gifts.
Right, his gifts basically, and he uses this to, manipulate the women in his life. And so, there's a lot of things that things we just talked about contributes to this. But some of the things you had said earlier that I thought was significant. But some of it has also to do with how their relationship with their mother early on in their lives, and so some men may have felt rejected by their mothers, and so they might. These men that might have a real problem with women.
A lot of them did have a father in the household, so he feels an obligation to be that male as a protector to his mother or his sisters.
Right, so you have that, yeah.
So, but again, sometimes it's just a story that they plant to themselves. Because you can be a protective provider for your.
Well, that ends up happening too. So you have men who the mothers, because she doesn't have a male in her life, he becomes the male in her life.
Right.
And so, and he feels like he has to be the protector.
That's the baby boy syndrome.
Well, he's baby boy, but he stays with his mother. Okay, so baby boy is not responsible.
Right, he ain't responsible.
Right. But you have some men whose mothers keep close to them, so keep close to them to take care of them and everything. So she becomes a man, and he becomes the man in her life. Right.
To help her through whatever she needs a male figure to do.
Right, exactly. And so he takes on his responsibilities very, very early in his life. And so anyway, we went down that road, but I meant something else about baby boy, because baby boy is somebody who's not taken out. He's with his mother, but he's not necessarily responsibly with her. But he thinks he is. So in the film, remember in the film, he was living with his mother, which you had said earlier about the male. So another male that comes in as a threat.
Right, because first off, when the male came in, he didn't want to be exposed.
Right.
To be a trifling brother. But in his mind, he wasn't. He was the protector of his mother.
Right.
So there's a double-sided sword in that. And when it comes to how you take away.
Right.
But
and so he might be jealous of the male that comes into her life. So there's some of that gender stuff that's very, very interesting. But then you also have men who, like I said, the mothers may have treated them badly because they reminded them of their fathers. You know what I mean? And the fathers who they thought was treating them, who they weren't, were hostile toward or felt, didn't feel good about. And so you have a lot of that kind. It's just different kinds of dynamics. Then you have some men who have a hard time falling, being in love with a woman because he fears that he's going to be like his father.
As he grows subliminally, he will unconsciously do the things out of response.
Yeah.
Or
What I call it the Jackson complex. It came out of the movie The Brothers. The father didn't treat the mother well in his mind anyway, and so he was afraid he was going to be like his father. So he was afraid to be in love with a woman because he was afraid that he might mistreat her.
Right. Saying that, right. If he faced conflict, then his response might be a response that he saw his father do, which he didn't think was a good response.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And then another one I call the Marcus complex, which I got from the Boomerang, where you have men who have all the accoutrements of what they consider masculinity and manhood in this culture. So they have money, a luxury car, they have a good job. They can wine and dine a woman. They can do anything for her. They can provide her, give her everything she wants materially. But for a lot of these men, they're seeking perfection.
Right.
And so they feel like if I'm bringing all this, and you need to be bringing all that.
That's what you call a selfish brother.
Right. Some of them are very, very selfish.
But he's deserving, so he worked hard to get there. But you know.
So right. So one of the things you find a brother that's up further along in the life cycle, like in his 40s and 50s, 60s, he hasn't been married, then it might, and he has all these things going on, then it might speak some things in terms of him looking for a perfect woman, which he's not going to find.
Okay.
Right, so,
well.
So getting okay, go on.
The hour is going on, so
right.
You have a final note?
Yeah. So, but basically, we want to deal with the fundamentally it gets back down to having a healthy definition of masculinity and of manhood, and so that's what Haki Madhubuti did in his book, which is one of the reasons I used to use it in my class, because he really did a really good job, I think, in terms of giving a really expanding the definition, because the definition is very, very limited. First of all, because it's about being an economic provider and a protector, but then you have the aspect of dominance and all that in it. And so I'm not going to get into Haki's definition. What we'll do after the show is we'll put a link to his definition, which is an expanded definition, and you can find a lot of the information in my book, African American Relationships, Marriages and Families, and then in Haki Madhubuti's book, Black Men Single, Obsolete and Dangerous.
Okay, listen, we're working with time restraints, so listen, I just want to say, listen, what we do, we do this because I like to drop information and drop nuggets, man, and try to get you to look in the mirror, look at each other, sit down, and while you're here watching us, sit down, look and talk to each other. At the same time, we have a conversation with you, have a conversation with your significant other, or soon to be, or you soon just talk to yourself. So then, when you do meet her or meet him, you got something to talk about. You have something that you can work off of. You know, we try to build a foundation. If you get solid footing, man, you can go all the way. You can walk into together a solid foundation, solid relationship, man, through a very solid path.
Did you play anything with love songs?
So what I'm going to do is What I'm going to do is I'm going to say thank you for watching, thank you for sharing your time with us, and if you have anything to close, my dear.
Oh no. So basically, what I had said, just be cognizant. It's just part of this talk was really for men and women to be cognizant of the politics of what it is to be a man in this culture. And if you understand the politics of it, then it helps increase our understanding and help us to have empathy, so have to be empathic in terms of understanding our partner.
Okay. Just remember, you all we have is us. All we have is us. Take care of us. You take care of her. You take care of him. You take care of these babies. Take care of your mama. Take care of your daddy. All we have is us, y'all. So that's it. So listen. Thanks for listening. And peace and bye-bye. You want to say bye?
Oh, and continue to grow in love.
That's right, Joe. Trust in me, trust in her. There you are. I'm just glad you took time out and listened to us. We'll see you next Friday. Because you're all I want.
Let it play a little bit.
Share my life, y'all.
We forgot to ask if they want to have any questions, but anyway, we'll do that next time.
Give you all my heart.
Give you all my heart.
Girl, my sunsets.
Girl, my sunsets.
Wow. That's where we need to be.
Everywhere you are.
Baby, I'm a dreamer.
It's okay to dream, y'all.
You're
We give you a destination.
That's right.
Your love's like a river, girl.
Wow.
It's running right through me. Share my life. Share. Hey, girl. You can trust in me.
You can trust in me.
Baby.
Can she trust in you? Have that conversation with her.
I want. Hey, girls. Everything I need. Hey.
Friday Night Love. Until next week, y'all. And a good night.
'cause I need you in my world.
Wow, so pretty.
Share my life, baby. Share. Hey, girl. You can trust in me, girl. Trust, baby. You're all I want. Baby, baby. You're everything I need. Yeah, I really mean it, baby. Hey, girl. I'll give you what you want, baby. Hey, if you want it, you can have it, baby. It's yours. Listen, I want you right here in my world, here in my life, here in my soul.
Okay.
I want the world to know that I need you, baby. I believe you, girl. I'll never be
You tell her that.
That's right.
Share my life, baby. Share my life, baby. Share my life, girl. Share my life, baby.